It was in the third year of my hidden relationship with Ethan that he chose to announce his engagement. The bride, however, was not me. When someone who knew the truth of our situation tried to speak up for me, Ethan just offered a cold, dismissive laugh. "If you feel so sorry for her," he said, "why don't you marry the deadbeat?" Not long after, when my grandfather's health took a serious turn for the worse, and our family company was thrown into turmoil, I had no choice but to announce my own news. Standing before a crowd of reporters, I took control of my family's legacy. "Miss Donovan," one of them called out, "is the child Mr. Sterling's?" A graceful smile touched my lips. "The child has nothing to do with Mr. Sterling." I later heard that Ethan, upon seeing the news broadcast and the slight curve of my belly on the television screen, flew into a rage and destroyed everything within his reach. Much later, a different man, Britain's most private and enigmatic tycoon, was spotted on a busy street speaking softly to a woman. "Clara," he murmured, "the baby is almost a year old. He'll be calling me dad soon. Don't you think it's time you made me an honest man?" When I pushed open the heavy oak door to the private dining room, the scene that greeted me was one I had played out in my nightmares. Ethan was down on one knee, holding open a velvet box containing an enormous diamond ring. He wasn't proposing to me. Before him, a young woman in a pristine white dress, undeniably beautiful and radiating an air of classic elegance, was nodding through a veil of happy tears. "I will," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. As I stepped into the room, Ethan didn't even bother to look up. His entire focus was on gently sliding the ring onto the woman's finger. It was only after she, accompanied by a friend, excused herself to go touch up her makeup that Ethan finally acknowledged my presence. His gaze was indifferent, almost bored. "Sophia is pure and a bit timid," he stated, as if discussing a business acquisition. "It took a great deal of effort to finally win her over. Whatever happened between us in the past, don't let Sophia find out about it. Also," he added, "she accepted my proposal. I'm planning to make the formal engagement announcement tomorrow." For 3 years, I had been Ethan's secret. Our relationship was a quiet understanding, known only to our family's elders and a very small, select group of people within our social circle. The moment he spoke, the few people in the room who knew the truth of our situation turned their sympathetic eyes toward me. I drew in a slow, deep breath, trying to steady the tremor in my hands. "Ethan, could you possibly delay the announcement? Even for a month? No, just half a month." A short, humorless chuckle escaped his lips, a flicker of sarcasm lighting his eyes. "Clara, at a time like this, are you still trying to cling to me?" His words were a physical blow. "Ethan, for the sake of everything we've been through." "Enough!" he snapped, his voice sharp as he suddenly slammed the wineglass on the table in front of him. "In 3 years, the Sterlings have already assisted the Donovan family in covering losses of at least $300 million. Isn't that enough repayment?" I had no response to that. It was true. "Just leave," he ordered coldly. "I don't want Sophia to come back and get the wrong idea." I turned, my body feeling stiff and disconnected, and walked towards the door. As my hand closed around the handle, I heard his voice drift across the room, directed at someone else. "If you feel so sorry for her, why don't you marry the deadbeat?" A bitter laugh escaped my lips before I could stop it. It was true that the Donovan family had fallen on hard times, a decline that had accelerated dramatically after my parents passed away, leaving the company teetering on the brink of collapse. But Ethan seemed to have conveniently forgotten that it was this same Donovan family that had saved both his and his grandfather's lives years ago. All he ever seemed to hold on to was a deep-seated resentment for what he perceived as my family forcing their benevolence upon him, and an even deeper resentment for the idea that he was being forced to accept me as part of that bargain. Ethan's engagement announcement spread through Britain's high society like wildfire. My grandfather, already frail from the grief of my parents' deaths, was so enraged by the news that his condition deteriorated rapidly, landing him in the intensive care unit. While I maintained a constant vigil at his bedside, my uncle and his cronies saw their opportunity and stormed the company headquarters. Previously, with the Sterling family's backing, they wouldn't have dared to make such a bold move. But now, with me effectively an orphan, they felt they had nothing to fear. During a fleeting moment of consciousness, my grandfather gripped my hand tightly, his voice a weak whisper. "Clara," he rasped, "the company was your parents' entire life's work. Even if it goes under, it cannot fall into the hands of those greedy wolves." Tears streamed down my face and I could only nod, my eyes red and swollen. "Don't worry, Grandpa, I already have a plan." My uncle's faction argued that a woman from the Donovan family could not inherit the business, using this antiquated excuse as a basis to seize everything that rightfully belonged to my branch of the family. I was determined not to let them succeed. In the second week following Ethan's engagement announcement, I made the most unconventional yet crucial decision of my life. I needed a child, an heir, to secure the Donovan family business. Since I didn't meet the strict criteria for artificial insemination, I ultimately chose the route of natural conception. As for the father of my child, Arthur, the housekeeper who had served my grandfather for decades, presented me with a curated file of candidates. "Miss, please take a look." The profile was concise. The man was from Crestwood City and used his mother's surname, which suggested he was likely from a single-parent home. His educational background was stellar, a clear indicator of high intelligence and good genes. A comprehensive health report confirmed he was in peak physical condition with no history of genetic diseases. Most importantly, the face in the photograph was extraordinarily handsome, almost arrestingly so. "Arthur, are you certain a man this exceptional would need to resort to this kind of work?" I couldn't help but voice my skepticism. Arthur offered a kind smile. "Apparently, a member of his family is seriously ill, and he is in urgent need of funds." A pang of sympathy struck me as I thought of my own grandfather, still lying in a hospital bed. "Add an extra 50,000 to his payment," I instructed. "Yes, miss." On the 12th day after Ethan's announcement, which also happened to be my peak fertile day, I met the man named Liam Hayes. He was dressed in a simple black shirt and trousers, both unbranded and likely purchased from a discount store, yet the inexpensive clothing looked anything but cheap on his frame. As stipulated in our contract, his eyes were concealed behind a black silk ribbon. When I entered the room, he rose to his feet instinctively, turning his head toward the sound of the door. It was then that I registered his height. He was very tall, at least 6'5", with a perfectly proportioned physique, broad shoulders, a narrow waist, and long, powerful legs. "Miss?" Liam's voice was a tentative query, and it was as pleasant as the rest of him. I found myself feeling more and more satisfied with my choice. "Yes," I said, walking toward him. "Don't be nervous." I reached up and patted his arm, feeling the solid muscle beneath his sleeve. "Have you showered?" I asked. "Yes," he confirmed. My own back was slick with nervous sweat, but I forced my voice to remain composed and businesslike. "Then let's begin." Liam couldn't see me, but I could see him perfectly. After I spoke, the corners of his mouth curved into a subtle smile. He faced me, the black ribbon a stark contrast against his skin, and gave a slight nod. "All right, miss." With long, deft fingers, he began to unbutton his shirt, one by one. The hem of his shirt pulled neatly from his trousers, and the sight of his lean waist and the defined V-line of his abs caused a rush of heat to my face. When his hand moved to the buckle of his belt, I panicked and spun around, my back to him. The soft rustle of fabric behind me stopped. The man's voice, deep and undeniably sexy, sounded again. "Miss, it's done." "Ah, okay. Then lie down on the bed," I managed, forcing myself to turn back around with an air of nonchalant confidence. My eyes widened. The long black ribbon trailed down from his neatly cut short hair. The cloth covering his eyes seemed to make his nose appear even more prominent, his jawline more defined. In my 24 years of life, this was the first time I had ever seen a man's body so closely, so directly. "Miss!" Perhaps because I had been silent for too long, Liam called out softly. He took a step forward, his hand extending as if searching for me in the dark. His fingertips brushed against my shoulder. He paused for a moment before his hand closed gently around it. In the next instant, he lifted me off my feet entirely. My body sank into the plush mattress of the bed. Liam's hands were placed considerately on either side of me, his weight supported by his arm so he wasn't pressing down on me. "If you feel uncomfortable at any point, please be sure to tell me, miss." My heart was hammering against my ribs so furiously I felt dizzy, almost unable to breathe. "Stop talking and hurry up," I snapped, turning my face away and biting down hard on my lower lip, not realizing that my ears and the back of my neck were flushed a deep crimson. "Okay." He lowered his head, and the black ribbon brushed against my collarbone. Just as Liam was about to kiss me, I instinctively turned my head away. "Don't touch my mouth," I warned, trying to sound fierce, but I was unaware that the ends of my words were trembling. "Bite me if it hurts," he murmured. Liam's cool fingers cradled my face as he placed a light kiss on my neck. As he leaned closer, my phone, lying on the nightstand, suddenly began to ring. Liam stopped immediately. I sat up and reached for the phone. My heart lurched when I saw Ethan's name glowing on the screen. I was stunned for a second before I declined the call, but it immediately began ringing again. I glanced at Liam's face beside me. His lips were thin, and I'd once heard that men with lips like that are naturally cold-hearted. I felt a momentary daze. Cold-hearted was good. Cold-hearted was better suited for this kind of transaction. Once the business was concluded, there would be no lingering attachments. I answered the call. Ethan's voice sounded strained, almost unfamiliar. "Clara, why didn't you tell me your grandfather was in the hospital? It's not exactly a secret. Where are you right now? I'll come pick you up and we can go visit him together." "That's not necessary." "Clara, your grandfather has always treated me well. I want to help put his mind at ease." "I said it's not necessary, but thank you for the offer." "Clara, you should know when to back down, shouldn't you?" Ethan's voice was now laced with a barely suppressed anger. I knew him well enough to understand that, for someone as proud and arrogant as he was, making this call and offering an olive branch was a rare concession. But it was genuinely no longer needed. It was far too late for any of it. I clutched the phone tighter, my eyes drifting to the man in front of me, sensing the potent energy he was holding back. "Ethan." Before I could finish my sentence, Liam's voice, husky and low, cut through the air. "Miss, can we continue now?" A searing kiss landed on the corner of my mouth as his tense, ready body pressed against mine. The phone slipped from my grasp, clattering to the floor. I frowned, a soft whimper escaping my lips. "It hurts!" Ethan's frantic voice came in fragmented bursts from the phone on the floor. "Clara, who are you with?" The screen went dark. I opened my mouth and bit down hard on Liam's forearm. He paused for only a moment before leaning down again, his movements impossibly gentle, yet unyielding as he captured my lips with his. My first instinct was to push him away, but after the initial light pressure, a sharp, piercing pain like being torn in two shot through me. Liam stopped abruptly. The ribbon that draped from his brow swayed gently against my neck. I cried out in pain, my fingertips unconsciously digging deep into the flesh of his arm. His large hand, which had been holding my waist, loosened its grip. He gathered me completely into his arms, his long fingers brushing the messy strands of hair from my face. Scorching, tender kisses fell on my skin again. As I gradually adapted to the sensation, lost in a hazy state of mind, he pinned me beneath him once more. At some point in the night, I briefly lost consciousness. So I never knew. I never knew that Liam had removed the ribbon covering his eyes in that moment. In the dimly lit bedroom, he gazed down at my face, his lips tracing a path from my brow downward, inch by inch. When I opened my eyes the next morning, I found myself dressed in a pair of clean, soft pajamas. The other side of the bed was empty and cool to the touch, as if everything that had transpired the previous night was nothing more than a vivid hallucination. I struggled out of bed to get washed and went downstairs for breakfast, where Arthur informed me that Liam had left late last night, just as we had agreed. I sat down at the dining table, my mind replaying his boldness from the night before, remembering how I had ultimately lost all control and followed his lead. The back of my neck grew warm at the memory. "Did you pay him?" I asked. "As we agreed, 1/3 has been paid. The remainder will be transferred once you've confirmed the pregnancy." I nodded, saying nothing more. At the Intercontinental Hotel, Liam had already changed out of his nondescript clothes. After a swim in the private rooftop pool, he found the old butler from his family's estate waiting for him in the living room. Eleanor heard you were in the capital. She wants you to join her for dinner this evening. Liam casually tossed his towel aside and chuckled. She has an ulterior motive. You'll be 28 after the new year, the butler pointed out. It's no wonder she's getting anxious. Liam walked to the refrigerator and pulled out a bottle of water. His wet black hair was slicked back, revealing a broad forehead and strong, well-defined eyebrows. There's no need to rush. In a little while, she might even find herself a grandmother. Liam took a sip of water, his eyes twinkling as he teased the butler who had watched him grow up. The butler was visibly startled. My dear young master, you can't be so reckless. Our two families have only you. The future young master or young miss will be more precious than gold. We can't afford to be so casual about it. The future lady of the house should be welcomed into the family with all the proper ceremonies. Of course, I know that, Liam said, sitting down on the sofa. His eyes dropped to the clear, distinct bite mark on his left forearm. Thinking of that night, his gaze gradually softened. But sometimes things don't go exactly as planned. On the third day, my period, which was only a day late, arrived as usual. When I came out of the bathroom, I sank onto the sofa, a wave of dejection washing over me. During this time, the turmoil in the outside world had only intensified, and my grandfather had slipped into a deep coma. The doctors informed me he had a month left at most. I called Arthur into my study. Get in touch with Liam. We'll try again next month. Yes, miss. I stood up and walked a few steps before turning back to Arthur. Make sure you review the rules with him again. If I wasn't so averse to the idea of facing another completely unfamiliar man, I would never have considered turning to Liam a second time. After all, during that night, he had crossed the established boundaries more than once. The day before my next scheduled meeting with Liam, I ran into Ethan at a party. To my surprise, his fiancée, Sophia, was not with him. The moment I saw him from across the room, I deliberately looked away. Today was a birthday celebration for an older family friend, an auntie of sorts. I had chosen to attend primarily to reconnect with some of my parents' old acquaintances, but it was clear I had been far too naive. I was already familiar with the saying, out of sight, out of mind, but today I was experiencing it in a much more direct and painful way. Back when Ethan and I were in our secret relationship, I knew there were no secrets that could truly remain hidden forever. During those 3 years, I had managed to maintain some semblance of standing in our circle solely because of the Sterling family's reputation. But now, with Ethan's public engagement and my status as an orphan with no powerful family to rely on, who would even spare me a second glance? I awkwardly held my glass up for a toast, waiting for a long moment before the birthday aunt finally deigned to acknowledge me, clinking her glass against mine before immediately turning away. It was clear she had no intention of engaging in small talk. Naturally, I wasn't going to stand there and be humiliated. After the perfunctory toast, I retreated to a secluded corner of the room. Being treated with such cold disdain had soured my mood, and I found myself drinking a few more glasses of champagne than I had intended. I didn't notice when Ethan approached me. Clara, he said, his tone still possessing that familiar air of superiority. I was no longer the timid girl who had so cautiously maintained our fragile relationship. Mr. Sterling, I greeted him coolly, standing up to leave. Ethan moved to block my path. Clara, I visited your grandfather a few days ago. He's not doing well. Yes, the doctor has spoken with me about his condition. Ethan's voice seemed to soften slightly. Clara, I've heard about the difficulties your family has been facing recently. What is it you're trying to say, Mr. Sterling? I looked at him, my expression calm but distant. When I was younger, I truly was naive and foolish. I believed that because we had known each other since we were children, because we had grown up together, and because my family had done his a great service, he would naturally treat me well. But I had overlooked a fundamental truth. If a man doesn't love you, kindness and obligation are not enough to bind him. In the end, my family's favor had become nothing more than a burden, a tool that made us seem petty and demanding. In all fairness, Ethan didn't truly owe me anything. You can't force feelings. Ethan took a step closer and gently took my hand. Clara, if you weren't so stubborn, I wouldn't hesitate to help you. Help me? Yes, he said with a small chuckle. After all, our lives were saved by your family. I've been waiting for you to come to me these past few days. Clara, we've known each other for so many years. I wouldn't turn my back on you completely. Just tell me what you really want, Clara. I won't marry you, but we can go back to our previous arrangement. I stared at Ethan, genuinely surprised. After all, he had proposed to Sophia that night with such heartfelt sincerity, a performance that had moved everyone in the room. So it had all been just an act. You already have a fiancé. So what? He replied with a smug look. In our circle, who doesn't have their own arrangements on the side? Clara, given your family's current situation, you know what the smart choice is. Being with me will only benefit you. Ethan, I interrupted, my voice filled with disgust. Before today, I didn't hate you. In fact, I was spending my time reflecting on how petty my own family had been for trying to force you into something because of a past favor. But now, I don't feel that way anymore, Judy. You are an absolute scumbag. If my family knew that the person they saved was such an ungrateful and morally bankrupt individual, they would deeply regret ever helping you. Clara, saying things like that won't do you any good. Think about your parents' legacy, all their hard work. If it's all ruined because of your pride, what will they think of you in the afterlife? If my parents knew I had to become your mistress to save their company, they would never forgive me. Clara, you'd better think this through. You know I won't give you a third chance. I picked up the wine glass from a nearby table and threw its contents in his face. Get lost! Ethan's face contorted with rage. For a moment, I braced myself, expecting him to strike me. After all, a man of his stature was not accustomed to being disrespected so openly. Clara, he snarled, I'll wait for the day you regret this, for the day you come crawling back to me. With that, he turned and stalked away. A low buzz of gossip erupted around us. I stood still for a moment, ignoring the whispers, then turned and walked out. Just as I climbed into my car, Arthur called. Miss, I've picked him up. Understood. I'm on my way back now. I hung up the phone and stared out at the darkening sky. If tonight didn't result in a pregnancy, I didn't have much time left. The car pulled up in front of the villa. The light in my bedroom was already on. I got out of the car, staggering slightly as I made my way up the stairs without assistance. Just like before, Liam was sitting quietly on the sofa, blindfolded. I pushed the door open and leaned against the frame, drunkenly studying him. I must have had a lot to drink because my emotions were a chaotic mess. Miss? Liam must have heard the door. He turned his face in my direction, looking at me through the silk ribbon. I walked toward him, my steps unsteady, my gaze fixed on his face and body. The faint, fresh scent of soap lingered in the air around him. The clothes he was wearing were clearly not his own. Arthur had likely prepared them. They were of high quality and suited his physique perfectly. Liam stood up. He was a full head taller than me, especially now that I had kicked off my high heels. Standing before him, I felt a strange sense of intimidation. I stood on my tiptoes and grabbed the collar of his shirt. Liam, who gave you permission to kiss me? Who allowed it? Miss. So you do remember that I miss your benefactor? A soft chuckle seemed to escape him. Yes, Miss is right. I overstepped. Will you dare to do it again? No, I won't. I patted his cheek in satisfaction. You listen well, I like that. As long as Miss likes it. But, I said, releasing my grip and taking a step back to look him up and down. Are you incapable? Or why am I not pregnant? I saw Liam flinch, a subtle but definite reaction. I'll give you one last chance. If I'm still not pregnant this time, I said, patting his handsome face again, Miss will find someone else. If there were a medicine for regret in this world, I would have taken it to erase the reckless words I spoke that night, especially my decision to question Amanda's capability. The consequence was that for the entire night, Liam nearly wore me out completely. Not only did he kiss me countless times, but he even forced me to kiss him back. If I hadn't broken down into tears and begged for mercy near the end, He probably would never have let me go. But all of that effort clearly paid off. When my grandfather's doctors announced that his condition had become critical again, my relatives from the Donovan branch cornered me at the company, demanding I hand over the official seal. In response, I immediately contacted the media and arranged a press conference. There, I publicly revealed my pregnancy report. I announced to the world that my child would carry my surname and would be the sole heir to the legacy my parents had built. Shortly after I wrapped up the questions from the press, I received a call from Ethan. He was audibly furious, his voice hoarse with rage. "Clara, I never touched you. Where did that child in your belly come from? Is this some kind of elaborate trick you've concocted?" I could understand Ethan's anger. After all, by my calculations, I was 5 weeks pregnant, and it had only been 3 months since we had officially ended things. "You certainly never touched me, and I never claimed the child's father was you," I said calmly as I stepped into the elevator, catching my reflection in the mirrored walls. "Ethan, we broke up a long time ago. Our lives are no longer connected. From this point forward, please don't call me again." "Clara, are you really pregnant? Who is the father? Tell me." I didn't answer him. I ended the call and deleted his contact information from my phone without a second thought. From now on, this would be my biggest secret. The man named Liam Hayes had already taken the money I had provided and returned to Crestwood City. We would never cross paths again in this lifetime. And I did, sir. In May of the following year, I gave birth to my son, Noah. As I had expected, he didn't look very much like me. Arthur remarked that Noah's eyes and jawline were the spitting image of Liam's. I would often look at my son and find myself lost in thought. Back then, I had insisted that Liam be blindfolded to prevent him from seeing my face, to keep him from ever discovering my identity. But Arthur had seen him. So, if Arthur said there was a resemblance, it had to be true. So, this was what Liam's eyes and features looked like. Even with the blindfold, it had been obvious that he was exceptionally handsome. A man like him, once he was out of whatever difficult situation he had been in, would undoubtedly go on to do great things. Considering that past, he would want to forget about our transaction even more desperately than I did. So I didn't worry about him suddenly appearing to claim his child, nor did I worry about ever encountering him again. But every time I looked at Noah, I couldn't help but think of those 2 nights. In this life, I might only ever have that one man, and only those 2 nights of pleasure. At Noah's 1-month celebration, the Beaumont family, known for being extremely low profile yet immensely powerful in England, sent a collection of valuable gifts. I was completely taken aback. Even the once glorious Donovan family or the still prominent Sterling family couldn't even begin to compare to the Beaumonts' influence and wealth. The Donovan family and the Beaumont family had no connection, none whatsoever. Why would they send such precious gifts? I was even more surprised when Eleanor Beaumont herself came to visit on Noah's 100th day. She then extended an invitation for me to join her for a small gathering 3 days later. A sense of unease mixed with puzzlement settled in my gut. Eleanor was a very gentle and kind elder, and she didn't seem to harbor any ill intentions toward me. She was especially fond of Noah, doting on him throughout her visit. In addition to the gifts she brought for me, she had prepared an incredibly generous 100-day gift for my son. When she was leaving, Eleanor hugged Noah, reluctant to let him go, looking back at him several times with a tender expression that only deepened my suspicions. So, when I went to the meeting 3 days later, I left Arthur at home to watch over Noah. I took only my assistant and my driver and went to Eleanor's private club. As soon as my car came to a stop, several staff members warmly approached to greet me. "Miss Donovan, please come in. Madam has been waiting for you." "Yes, Madam instructed us to wait for your car outside." "Thank you," I said with a smile, walking with them toward the flower hall. As we approached, I saw a dark gray Bentley slowly pull up in the distance. The driver hurried to open the rear door, and a very tall man emerged from the car. Through a row of flowering trees, I could only make out a vague impression of his side profile, yet my heart gave an inexplicable leap. Even my steps faltered. I had never seen Liam in the daylight or under bright lights, but the moment I saw that silhouette, I felt an undeniable sense of familiarity. At the same time, I couldn't help but deny the possibility in my mind. Liam was from Crestwood City. His mother was from Crestwood City as well. Arthur had specifically chosen him because he wasn't British and lived far away. He wouldn't just randomly appear in England. But then again, England wasn't my personal territory, and I didn't have the power to keep Liam away forever. It wouldn't be entirely shocking if he came to the UK. But could it really be him? Miss Donovan, someone beside me called softly. I snapped back to reality and hurried to catch up. Does Eleanor have other guests today? The person leading the way smiled warmly. Our young master just returned to the capital. As they spoke, they gestured toward the Bentley. That is the young master's car. So, the man from earlier was Eleanor's only son. Eleanor had married into the Beaumont family in England from her home in Crestwood City. Naturally, her only son would carry the surname Beaumont. So, he wasn't Liam Hayes. I let out a quiet sigh of relief. But strangely, I also felt a flicker of indescribable disappointment. This feeling was almost laughable. Why was I disappointed? Could it be that deep down I was still hoping to see Liam again? We were merely two parties in a transaction. After the deal was concluded, everything should have been cleanly and completely severed. Though I told myself this, I still felt a bit dazed as I walked. As I entered the flower room, I heard the sound of laughter from within. Eleanor was likely talking with her son. Instinctively, I looked up, and my eyes met those of the man standing beside her. Eyes I had never seen before, yet it felt as if I had seen them countless times. My heart stopped for a beat. Even my thoughts seemed to freeze. Miss Donovan is here. Eleanor stood up with a smile and walked over, taking my hand and leading me to a seat before instructing a servant to bring tea. Liam, this is Miss Donovan, Eleanor said, looking from her son to me, her smile widening. Miss Donovan, this is my unsatisfactory son. Miss Donovan, Liam said, walking over and extending his hand to me. I've heard so much about you. My heart began to pound, the rhythm gradually becoming violent and erratic. My mind remained a complete blank, but a loud buzzing sound slowly filled my ears. I didn't respond politely, nor did I shake his outstretched hand. Instead, I looked at Eleanor, my voice sounding foreign even to myself. Eleanor, what did you just call him? Eleanor seemed slightly taken aback, but continued to smile. His name is Liam Beaumont. Liam Beaumont? I murmured the name, my gaze fixed on the man in front of me. He had the same height as Liam Hayes. If I were to cover his eyes, showing only his nose and lips, my body suddenly swayed. Miss Donovan. Liam quickly reached out to steady me. I pushed him away. I raised my hand and gently covered his eyes with my palm. Identical, they were exactly the same. I remembered our first night together. I had even thought to myself that Liam's lips were a bit thin, and that men with lips like that were said to be heartless. But for me, heartlessness had been a good thing. It was more fitting for our transaction. But if Liam Beaumont was Liam Hayes, why had he deceived me? He was clearly a high-born young master, born with a silver spoon, yet he had pretended to be a poor student in desperate need of money. And he had even engaged in such an absurd transaction with me. Fine. Even if it was for fun, for the thrill of it. After the deal was over, it should have ended completely. Why had he suddenly appeared in front of me? Why was he suddenly inserting himself into my life and my child's life? In that instant, it all made sense. I understood why the Beaumont family had sent gifts for Noah's 1-month celebration. Why Eleanor had personally visited when Noah was 100 days old. Why she doted on Noah so much. It was because they all knew. They knew Noah was Liam's child. They wanted to take my child away from me. When my hand fell away from Liam's eyes, tears suddenly burst forth, streaming down my cheeks. Liam was obviously flustered. Clara, he said, instinctively reaching out to wipe my tears away, but I slapped his hand away. I'm sorry, I'm not feeling well. I need to go back now. Miss Donovan, you don't look well. Let Liam take you home. I wiped away my own tears, looking at the man standing before me. I couldn't stop a loud, bitter laugh from escaping. Liam. Should I call you Liam Beaumont? Or Liam Hayes? Clara! I didn't stay another second. I grabbed my bag and turned to leave. Eleanor and Liam followed me, but I didn't want to stop. Everything was too sudden, too impossible to accept. I felt like a complete clown who had been kept in the dark the entire time. Clara, can you just let me say a few words? Liam grabbed my wrist. Without thinking, I shook his hand off. If I remember correctly, our contract stated very clearly that after the deal was concluded, there should be no further ties between us. You took the money, so you should follow the agreement. Mr. Beaumont, it doesn't matter to me whether you're Liam Beaumont or Liam Hayes. Our relationship ended completely last year. I don't care why you're suddenly standing in front of me now. I took a deep breath, gradually forcing myself to calm down. I have one thing to say. The child is mine, and he has nothing to do with you. No one should even think about taking him from me. Clara, I never wanted to take the child away. Fine, then I'm just being paranoid. Pretend I didn't say anything. I want to go home now, is that okay? Perhaps I looked so distraught that Liam didn't try to stop me again. Eleanor called me several times in the following days, but I didn't answer. Liam also came to the Donovan house, but I refused to see him. Noah grew bigger day by day, and just as Arthur had said, his eyebrows and eyes were almost identical to Liam's. I also learned a few things about Liam from Arthur. He was an only child. In both his paternal grandfather's family and his maternal grandfather's family, he was the sole heir. He essentially had two identities. In Crestwood City, he was Liam Hayes, the young master of the Hayes family. In Britain, he was Liam Beaumont, the young master of the Bowmonts. So it wasn't really a deception. Liam was his real name. I just felt an overwhelming sense of embarrassment whenever I thought about the time we spent together. The sole heir of the Hayes and Beaumont families. And there I was, feeling sorry for him, offering him an extra £50,000 as compensation. Was Liam laughing at how foolish I was when he took the money? Sometimes I just couldn't understand it. A man like him, what kind of woman couldn't he have? What kind of thrill couldn't he experience? Why did he have to choose to mess with me in this particular way? He said he didn't want to take the child, but I couldn't be naive enough to believe that. His family had so few descendants. Even if Liam himself didn't care, the elders in his family might not feel the same way. What if they really decided to fight me for custody? I didn't even dare to imagine that outcome because the outcome was obvious. It would be like an ant trying to stop a speeding car. Even though I refused to meet with anyone from the Beaumont family, Liam still quietly seeped into my life. The Beaumonts truly didn't show any intention of fighting me for Noah. On the contrary, they showered both of us with gifts on an almost daily basis. Even when I refused the deliveries and kept them out of my house, they persisted. Sometimes even Arthur would gently advise me. For a family like the Beaumonts to humble themselves like this, it's quite rare. As he said this, Liam was waiting downstairs. It was an unusually hot and unbearable day in England. Around noon, the sun was blazing down. Liam's hair was damp with sweat, his suit jacket was draped over his arm, and his shirt was soaked through in the back. "Miss, I don't believe the Beaumonts have any malicious intentions," Arthur said, looking down at the man in the driveway with a hint of reluctance. "And this Mr. Beaumont? He doesn't seem like a bad person." "Miss, you've seen it for yourself. For over a month now. Honestly, for a man like Mr. Beaumont, if he truly wanted to do something, why would he need to go through such lengths?" I couldn't help but look downstairs as well. Liam had been standing there for nearly 2 hours. The heat was still oppressive. If something were to really go wrong. Thinking of Noah, thinking of his eyes that looked just like Liam's, my resolve finally softened. "Let him in. And prepare some ice water in the kitchen," I said softly, my eyes falling on Liam's handsome and noble face. After a moment, I finally looked away. "I'll go down later to have a proper talk with him." Arthur went downstairs happily, and I sat upstairs for a while longer. I changed into a simple dress and then made my way down. Liam was sitting in the living room drinking tea. When he saw me coming down the stairs, he put down his teacup and stood up. "Miss Donovan." I had the servants leave the room and got straight to the point. "Mr. Beaumont, let's have a proper talk today. You and Eleanor. What exactly do you intend to achieve by doing all of this? Liam looked at me, silent for a long time. I could hear the steady ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall. Occasionally, the birds in the cage under the eaves outside would chirp lazily. Farther away, I thought I heard Noah crying, but then he stopped, and everything was quiet again. The air conditioning was on inside, but my heart was in chaos, unbearably restless. Just when I was about to lose my patience and ask him to leave again, Liam finally spoke. Miss Donovan, I want to marry you, with all the proper ceremonies. I was stunned. The teacup in my hand nearly slipped and fell to the floor. Then Liam spoke again. Miss Donovan, this idea wasn't a sudden impulse, nor was it a decision I made after weighing the pros and cons. Then what is it? Leo smiled softly. Clara, do you remember 20 years ago, you and your grandfather saved some people at sea? Of course I remember, but I was very young back then. Later, my grandfather often told me the story, and that's how I remembered it all these years. And Ethan and his grandfather were the ones our family's yacht rescued that day. I was also one of the people you rescued. But my grandfather never mentioned you. Because it was my cousin who had taken me out to sea. He was afraid our family would find out and hold him responsible, so he kept my identity a secret. I was only 8 years old then, terrified out on the open sea, on the brink of losing my life. In the end, all I could remember was a yacht named the Donovan. Liam's voice softened at this point, and a very young, adorable little girl who gave me a cup of hot water. Clara, I've never changed my mind all these years. I wanted to find that person and marry her. Even long after Liam had left, my heart was still in a complete mess. I called Arthur into the study. Arthur, how did you find Liam back then? Arthur looked a bit sheepish. Miss, actually, Mr. Beaumont came to me first. I had already selected 2 other candidates for you and was about to send you their information. But Mr. Beaumont's credentials and background were just too perfect, so I selfishly added him to the list. I didn't expect that you would choose him as well. I felt a mix of amusement and exasperation. He was certainly confident. Didn't he ever consider what would have happened if I hadn't chosen him? It dawned on me then that I had actually seen his photograph before. Arthur had sent me his file, and it included a headshot. I had been instantly drawn to his face. Arthur, I asked, what do you think I should do now? Miss, you're not even 25 yet. You once told me you would never marry, and honestly, I never approved of that idea. You're still so young, with so much of your life ahead of you. If Mr. Beaumont is sincere, perhaps you should consider giving him a chance. Besides, the Beaumont family isn't trying to take away the child. They seem quite genuine to me. With a loving sigh, Arthur continued, I know Ethan hurt you very badly, but there are still good men in this world, aren't there? But he lied to me, I countered. Why couldn't he have just come to me and said he wanted to repay our family's kindness? There were so many other ways he could have done that. Why did he have to resort to this? Arthur couldn't help but laugh. It's because you were moving too quickly. If Mr. Beaumont hadn't stepped in when he did, you might have already chosen someone else and been tied to them. It was a desperate move. Mr. Beaumont was afraid he would miss his chance and regret it for the rest of his life. I grabbed a pillow from the sofa and pressed it against my face. I'm angry and I dislike him. Why should I give him a chance? Even if I want to date someone, it doesn't have to be him. There are plenty of handsome, excellent men in England. Arthur chuckled. All right, you can date whoever you want. But despite saying that, Arthur still ended up siding with Liam. As soon as there was any hint of a move from my end, Liam knew about it right away. Even when I was just sitting down for afternoon tea with a potential date, Liam's Bentley would be parked across the street. Although neither of us was married the moment his car appeared, I felt like a thief caught red-handed. Liam didn't bother me. He didn't even get out of the car. But I couldn't relax, and I always ended up finding an excuse to get rid of my date. As the sky began to darken, I picked up my bag and walked out of the cafe. Liam got out of his car as well. The streetlights were flickering on, one by one, bathing him in a soft, warm glow. I pretended not to see him and walked straight ahead. Without looking back, I knew he was following me. The light at the crosswalk turned green, and just as I was about to step into the street, Liam gently grabbed my wrist. A cyclist sped past right in front of me. Liam pulled me closer, in front of him. Winter had arrived in England. He was wearing a dark navy coat, and he enveloped me in its warmth. Clara, he called my name softly. As the cool night breeze blew, he lifted his hand to smooth my messy hair. I noticed someone in the distance seemed to be taking pictures. These days, I had been hearing all sorts of rumors about the Beaumont family and Liam. He spent most of his time in Crestwood City and was known for being very low-key and mysterious when he was in Britain. But he had been visiting my house so frequently lately that the busybodies and paparazzi had started to take notice. Liam, it looks like someone is taking pictures, I said, trying to push him away. But Liam just let go of my wrist and wrapped his arms securely around my waist. Clara! He tilted his head down and whispered in my ear, Noah is almost one. He's about to start calling me Dad. Don't you think it's time you gave me a proper title? Those photos and videos spread like wildfire across Britain. Some people were even attempting to lip-read the clips of Liam to guess what he had said to me. Even Ethan came to visit the Donovan house. It was quite strange. Back when he was so deeply in love with Sophia, they had announced their engagement almost 2 years ago, but they still hadn't held a wedding. I met him in the living room. Ethan got straight to the point. Is the child Liam's? I didn't answer his question, instead asking one of my own. What does that have to do with you? Clara, Liam comes from an incredible background, and he's the sole heir to both the Beaumont and the Hayes families. What do you think his real motives are? He just wants to take the child. Whether he does or not, why do you care? Clara, I'm looking out for you. I'm afraid you'll be deceived and end up getting hurt. What could he possibly deceive me about? That he wants to take Noah away? You're overthinking things. Liam showed up quickly, likely tipped off by Arthur. I leaned back into the soft sofa, sipping my tea comfortably. Liam, covered in a light dusting of snow, strode into the living room. A servant quickly brought him his favorite Dragonwell tea. He sat down beside me, perfectly at ease, as if he were in his own home. Ethan looked uncomfortable but pressed on. Liam, you can't tell me you haven't thought about it. Noah is your son, after all. Even if you haven't, surely the Beaumont and the Hayes families have? I held my teacup, watching the tea leaves float and sink. It was something I had been curious about myself, but I had never asked Liam directly. Liam took a sip of his tea, the clinking of the cup against the saucer sounding clearly in the quiet room. The room was warm, but outside snow was falling heavily. I put down my cup and looked out at the snow. Liam took my hand in his. Noah is always going to have his mother's surname. That will not change. When he said that, Ethan looked visibly shocked. Liam, can you really do that? I also couldn't help but look at him. Time will tell, Liam said calmly. It's easy to make promises. Who doesn't know how to do that? Justin's face grew darker. Leo just chuckled and said, Exactly. Who can't make promises? Mr. Sterling, you and your grandfather should know that better than anyone. Ethan turned pale. It was true. His grandfather had made all sorts of promises back then, but in the end, they had all been broken. When my grandfather entrusted me to him, he had promised to look after me and protect the Donovan family. But what had happened? Yet in that moment, I felt a sense of relief. Finally, at this moment, I was completely relieved. We hope for returns on our kindness, and that's why we end up so disappointed. But when we ask for nothing in return, fate often gives us the best possible arrangement. For instance, sending Liam into my life. After Liam and I got engaged, he naturally started staying at the Donovan house. It was still the same bedroom, still those serene nights. The only difference was that Liam's face was no longer covered with a black silk band. We had both had a few drinks. Feeling a little tipsy, I pushed him onto the couch and really looked at him for the first time. What are you thinking? About why you're doing this? How else can I repay you for saving my life? Marrying you seems like the most obvious choice. I'm the one losing out by marrying you, I teased. Liam chuckled, holding me tight, his chin resting on my shoulder. Clara, it's my fault. Of course it's your fault. You have no idea how much I hated you, and you have no idea how much I like you. Will you really let Noah take my last name? Of course. What if I never want to have any more children after this? Then we won't. But you're the only child of the Beaumont and the Hayes families. We have Noah, but he's mine. Does it matter? Liam lowered his head to kiss me. Isn't he also my child? Doesn't he have the blood of the Beaumonts and the Hayes running through him? Few people can think so clearly. It just depends on what's most important to each person. I couldn't help but laugh. I held his face just as I had on that drunken night and asked him, "Did you take a shower?" "I did, young lady." "Then take off your clothes." He smiled, a mischievous twinkle in his eye. He pulled me up to stand beside him and then stood up himself. In the warm, spring-like house, Liam unbuttoned his shirt. He swiftly pulled the shirt tails from his trousers and then unbuckled his belt. But this time, I didn't look away. I watched him until the very end. He cleared his throat, his hot gaze drifting over my face. "Clara, girls should be a bit more reserved." I laughed and threw myself into his arms. "Are you getting shy?" Liam caught me firmly and whispered in my ear, "This time, can I kiss you?" I didn't answer with words. Instead, I stood on my tiptoes and kissed him,